Like, I just feel like there's a disconnect between those two. And I don't like feeling like I am adventuring with somebody I don't know. So I really just want to sit and have a conversation with Ellie and like, hey, buddy, you're super dope. You got some great magic, but I want to know more. Like, I want to know more about Elian and Bryden and how Bryden became Elion's student and how he ended up a teeny tiny lizard and now he's sitting on his shoulder, you know? I want to know more about, I know a lot about Scully and how his story, what he thought it was and like the reality. And that was really, really great. But I want to hear and communicate amongst each other, right? Like there's a lot of things that have gone on through the campaign that we're just like, okay, we're going to keep moving through the story and just get left by the wayside. And that's something like Fireside Chat that we did when Scully and Rin and Elian first joined the party. I loved that because it was a chance for in-character recap of what we had already done. And it was our viewpoint instead of the DM explaining, hey, this is what the group has been doing for this long, and these are the places they went. No, it's like a character's vision of the shit that they went through, right? And like everybody has a different viewpoint. And like lucky for us in D&D, we have two viewpoints. We have our character's viewpoint, and then we have our own personal like meta view behind it. So even though I might do something as Tick that I as a person am like, Huli, you would not make that decision. No, but Tick would, right? Like, and I love it. And that's what I love about the other characters. I just feel like I don't know you, and I want to know you. I want to know your characters in character. Like, I know out of character the story, but in character, I want to know more. I want to have that connection with my party members where it's like band of brothers, nobody gets left behind, instead of this like overarching, we're a party, we have to stay together. I want that actual connection. Like, Rin, I know that you worked in the Red Guard, but I don't know really much other than that, right? Like, there's just some things that I feel like I'm missing, and I want them. I'll give them to me. I want them all. And the viewers and the DM maybe can have them too. I don't really care about that. I just want them. But it is, it's like Tick. Like, for example, Tick. When I joined the party, when I joined the Quintex as Tick, it was all testosterone. I walked into a group of testosterone. There was no balanced out energy. It was hack and slash, hack and slash, hack and slash. And we kind of moved through that as a party when it came to like, oh, this character isn't a hack and slash character, so we need to, oh, we can do puzzles now? Oh, well, it's before we didn't do puzzles because all we did was kill shit with shillelaghs and spiders in the middle of the woods. But now, you know, there's so much, our characters are at level 15, 16 now, I think, 15 or 16. And so it's like, that's 15 levels, 16 levels of life, like experience gain and things that have pushed us to that point that are so much different than when Tick joined. Because when I joined this campaign, I was like, oh, this sounds cool. Yeah, I'll have fun doing this. Oh my God, it's a whole new can of worms. Like, Benalia is a living, breathing world that we are immersed in, and it keeps living and breathing no matter what we do. We might have some ripple effect, or we might be so minor on the scale of life that nothing that we do affects anything. The world keeps going, right? So in the beginning, when we would meet people, when I first joined, when we would meet people, it would be like, oh, the Quintex, I don't know who you are. Well, we're like, well, we're this great group of adventurers, and an NPC really humbled us because they're like, yeah, so great that we don't know who you are, essentially, right? So it's like kind of a reality check where we were like, oh, we're not as cool as we think we are, and the world doesn't revolve around us. No, because the world is the world, and we are just a small cog in the wheel, right? And I really like that a lot. There's like a lot of things when we first, when I first joined, We had barely even knew what the chronometron was. It was something in a journal that somebody had mentioned. And we were like, wait a minute, this could mean something. And they want to get to the Tinkerer because they want the chronometron. Maybe we should go to the Tinkerer. And then that's when the Tinkerer, you know, we got there and he talked to us for his few moments that he could break away from science and said, oh yeah, I can build this with these things. And we're like, well, if he can build it with these things, it needs the help. We can get the pieces. So that's kind of really like where it started in the chronometron, but that wasn't where we were when I first joined. That wasn't where the mindset really was, because it was before Escort College was even finished when TIC became part of the Quintex. Escort College still was just bare bones. There wasn't anything there. And the previous members of the Quintex that were there had already tried to go to Escort before, and they didn't have a really good experience there. They ran into, you know, the construction crew and the gnomes, where these little low-level characters think they're just going to waltz into a construction site and get the information that they want. And then that's where Penis Noir came from, you know, even though his name is Pinot Noir, like that's where the whole Penis Noir is a big dick sort of conversation came from. And it was just like, it's really humbling when the world says, no, you don't get to be Superman at level 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 15. You don't get to be Superman because the world still moves even if you're adventuring through it. You know, there's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's gone on from the very beginning of my time, which I joined. Oh, they had been playing. I don't know, Mr. World. How long do you think you guys had already been playing when I joined? We were in like early 20s of episodes, I think.
I think if that.
Yeah.
I think it's how many of them streamed is a good question. So it's probably early 20s sessions. You were probably level, what, 4, 5 when you joined?
When I joined the Quintex, yeah. I believe I joined at a level 6 or so.
Okay. So we can do the math. That's pretty easy. 1 session at level 1, 2 sessions at level 2, 3 sessions at level 3. So that's 6 sessions to get to level 4. Then 4 sessions at level 4. That's 10. 4 more at 5. So you were session 15.
Yeah. So there was still, campaign had been moving, but it was still very young at that point, right? So we're a year in.
Yeah, I hadn't even like thrown out all of the breadcrumbs to see what you were interested in, right? And it was still very much in like, this is a whole world with different regions. Let's go to each region and check it out. That's sort of when you came in. And you would hear different things about other regions from, let's say you were in the forest, and you would hear things about Matria. And there'd be little like subtle clues out there. And I'd see which you picked up on, which you speculated. I sow a little bit of paranoia and speculation. I want you paranoid and speculating things. I listen to your speculation, the things that are really good. I build out storyline from there. So you joined in when it was still just like explore the map.
Yep.
So you came in at a really good time.
And there's still a lot of parts of the map that we haven't even gone to. There's still, what do we have activated? I think 2 lighthouses we have activated, and we have
3
lighthouses out of what, 13?
I can look at the map. I can bring the map up.
There's a handful. So we've got Kamachtaklan. I don't know nothing about Kamachtaklan. I don't even know if we've met anybody from there or anything, but I know that exists. Kindermund, that's where Tick is from. We've been there as a party 2 times, and both times were Tick related. That's something we know very, very little about. Asperon, Tick had never gone to Asperon. They had already been there before I had joined. So that's something I've never been. I've never been to Matri. I've skirted around it. Like, there's still a lot of map that we haven't touched because we've been kind of like following this one particular set of quest line, you know, that we have little things here and there around it. But the map is still so big, so big. So maybe
actually the group made it to the Sokor Pass. They never went beyond it. They had a big battle there and basically turned back. So let's go in here. These are the 3 that you have unlocked.
Glaciava, Fjordlands, and Calfax.
Yep. And then down here, if you can see my cursor, Sokor Pass is where the Battle of Mist Lake occurred. There's the
Right.
lake. Lots of stuff happened in Esmeralda.
Esmeralda. We've spent a lot of time there.
Escor, yep. And then travel to Harboron. You've spent some time in the Fjordlands. Broadwalk is no more. It's been destroyed by the zombies of Matria.
Yep.
Matria at the beginning of the campaign was just a the mothers were artificially keeping everyone alive. There were a million souls here just chewing through all of the natural resources, being kept alive through healing magic, is what everyone thought. It was just a bunch of clerics. In reality, those were hags. There was a evil necromancer essentially building an army under everyone's nose that looked like, 80 to 130-year-old people. All of the young people, most of the young people, would leave to go to Broadwalk and wind up working in Harboron. But those that stayed would just stay there and stay alive and linger. And one of the things we explored early in the campaign was, are you living or are you lingering? And people in Matria were lingering. When the hags fell, remember there was another party. When the hags were defeated,
Yep.
all of these people died and turned to zombies. So that's how the zombie apocalypse happened. And that happened during the campaign. All of the signs were there. The party never decided to sort of investigate to a level of depth to find out what was really happening. So when it happened, the party decided we have to undo this. Right? And the way to undo it is to build a time machine.
Yeah, it wasn't even just that, right? Like, there wasn't even just the zombies of Matria that we had thought, oh, we could build a time machine. Also, Esmeralda Forest, when I first joined the Quintex, we had Olazana. Olazana was an Eladrin elf whose family was originally from the Forest of Esmeralda and had been driven out because of their King Sylvanus had made a decision, an agreement with the dragon that he didn't realize that he was making, and it kind of ruined things. So there was that, and then there was the Matrian Oath, and then what had happened in Kindermunt, where Harboron sits, where Tix people are originally from before the Red Dragon Maestro, who we have learned is still in Harboron area, and now we know was working with Zada. Maestro had pushed the dwarves and the people of Kindermunt down under the Earth's crust, where they now live between, the surface and the Underdark. There's just a little place that exists in between those two, and that's where you find Kindermunt. And there was just so many things that from the original party, that original Quintex that I had joined at that point, right? Like from Tick's version of original Quintex that had happened, that we were like, well, maybe we could fix this. Where along the way, like, things have changed. Party members have died. Party members have gone off in their own way. The Quintex split from the Quintex where it was original to two different adventuring groups based on, what at the time felt like morality. Maybe it wasn't moral indifference, and it was just we couldn't get along difference, and we didn't realize it. Everything happened the way that it happened, and that brought us to this point. But there's still so much, right, that we have no idea about. So much. Glaciava, there's a lot about Glaciava that we don't know, other than it's a shitball place to be. Like, and when I think of Sin City, that's what Glaciava reminds me of. It's Sin City, where everything goes, but nothing goes at the same time. There's just a lot,
Yeah, and when we came into the group at Escort College, there was lots of stuff that had happened prior to us, and we really haven't. We as a group really haven't had that exchange of knowledge. We've had bits and pieces about what's occurred prior to Elion and Scully and Ren coming into the group, which I think will be very beneficial for that to be spread, because of course the three of us have different experiences within the world that haven't been explored, and haven't been talked about either. Um, so I think that's something that will be very good with this travel, on the boats to share.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Like, I've kind of talked about a few things here and there, but there's a lot of like in character knowledge that we've relied so heavily on our bookkeeper to hold on to, not thinking like, oh, hey, maybe there's going to come a day where we don't have our bookkeeper anymore, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that we really should probably talk about. And some knowledge, when Tick was MIA for a period of time, is lost to me because I wasn't there to be able to hear and know what was going on. Now I could go back and listen to sessions, and I will admit that I have been a lazy player and haven't listened to all of them, just a couple. That's on me. But there's just still so much, like, it would take me 100 years probably to go back and pick out everything that I thought was a pertinent piece of information that I wish that I would have thought about passing on now. That's why, like, I think it's so important as a party to not only interact with the DM and the world in role play, right, but also each other. So, like, whenever we are taking a long rest or stopping or something, I think there's a lot of open time there that we could.
Yeah. And like me and Handuk, we interact with each other 24/7.
Yeah, there's a. And that's another thing, like Scully and Handuk, right, were such opposite characters. Like, when Scully came to the party, he was like, oh, I'm part hag. I'm very proud of hags. I want to prove to you that hags aren't what you think they are, and necromancers aren't what you think they are, as we watch the world around us fall apart because of hags and necromancers, where Handuk had originally been somebody that was unknowingly giving a hag's curse to other people. And so he's got this place of like, man, I have contributed to the million zombie army for the last 78, I think Handuk is 78. So last 78 years of his life, he had been believing that Matria was the way, and that the Matrian Oath was so important, and that we needed to give it to the world. And he had to go through his own character break over Matria, very, very similar to the way Scully's going through a character break over
now specifically.
Yeah. And so you guys, I think that's going to be a really, really good interaction between the two characters.
I need Handuk here because I have revelation that I have to speak to him about.
Well, you just continue to work on your proper wording of your revelation, and when Handuk wakes up from his 5 o'clock nap, then you can tell him about it.
Mira, well, Ren and Alien, you guys know me as the soul-sucking, monstrosity-killing machine that I am, right?
Yeah, but I don't know that Elian necessarily sees you as a monstrosity. But
oh no,
I'm hideous.
I'm an abomination to humankind. So I renounce the way of necromancy. I follow the light. I followed the order and the light, and I found through my mother that I could be. I've been simulacring so many of you that I decided to switch completely. I am a level 2 fighter, level 13 invocation wizard. I do not longer suck or eat souls anymore. And I do not raise the dead. They should stay dead. Like I'm going to leave all the hags.
That is very good to hear.
And I can copy healing spells now from Handuk. So I can heal as a backup.
I am very pleased to hear that.
So I can for the star god mass healing word.
Yeah, and I think that's so great, right? Because when Handuk had rescued Olazana, you guys unfortunately never got to meet the character Olazana. Olazana was a big personality, but in a different kind of way of charisma, more of like a big personality of I'm here and it's time to go, right? Like, so Olazana and Handuk had this relationship because Handuk had saved her, and she was trapped by a genie in an underwater prison, which is where Handuk has his version to genies. Is, you know, he had saved Olazana, and he, in his mind, once he took the path of the star god, he was like, this is the reason I have chosen the star god, was, you know, this is the path that was chosen for me, is because of this child, this star child, Olazana, the star child. So for a really long time, like Handuk says, for the star gods now, but before it was always star child, you know. And that's a really good, it's going to be, I think, a really good dynamic between Handuk and Scully, because I think that was a big disconnect that we had in the party, right? Was
We were two different things.
right, you were the opposite of each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and
now I believe his path is the right way, and there's no other path better than him. I have seen the light.
Scully has slowly been a concern to Ren, just stranger and stranger.
And now, because I simulacrum Handuki, I felt the power of light through my body, and I feel like light is the only way. Darkness is too hard. Light is better. You can see better in light than darkness.
And that's good. Like, that is something that I think the whole party needed from Scully without even knowing. Because there was just, I like Scully out of character. Harold, you and I get along really well. You're great. Like, you crack me up, right? In character, Tick likes Scully, but she's just always had this, I don't know, bird on her shoulder that says, there's an issue here for many reasons, but he's an all right guy, so we're just gonna let it go. So, like, the whole, I'm not doing I'm no necromancy, no hags, fuck hags. That's really good, because I think it's like a breath of like, oh, we don't have to kill Scully sometime down the line.
Because my thing was just to revive hags and I was trying to use the Necromanatron to do my own thing. And it was completely different from you guys.
Right.
But now I completely understand the right way. I see the light. I was blinded by what I was told and what I was taught when I was little.
You were blinded by the hag's light, wrapped up like a douche, and you know, and now you're like, oh wait, that's the wrong light. That's not the light. That's the dark. This is the light, and this is where I should have been the whole time. And I get it, right? Like Sylvia, there's been a lot of in between session role play between Sylvia and Tick, where we had a lot of conversations to each other of, is what we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Is what we're doing good or evil? There's been this conversation that has, there's two things that have been a prominent conversation through the Quintex. Is one thing, what is good and what is evil, right? Because that was where when Elion, Scully, and Rin had joined, where we had the disconnect in the party between what is good and what is evil, where some people thought that, you know, one thing that was a major pivotal decision was a good act, and other of us thought that is an evil thing to do to people, right? Like, so there was two totally different, like, is this good, is this evil? And then that's been weighing all the way down along the line, is, are we being a good party or are we being an evil party? And then the other thing is, if you buy a ship and through time you make repairs and changes to the ship, and eventually it comes to the point where it's the same ship with the same name, but none of the original pieces are on the ship, is it still the same ship? Those are kind of been like the two underlying philosophical questions that the Quintex has been writing on. What is good and what is bad, and is
the
this
writing
still
guy.
the same ship?
The guy that's reading our future. Oh.
Well, I have an opinion on the second one.
What's the
Um, well, the fact that the answer to the question, in my opinion, is that no, it is not the same ship. It doesn't mean that it's completely different, but because it has happened over time and there's been more experiences, it can never ever be the same ship.
valid? That's a very valid philosophical point. Let me tell you where that ties into the Quintex, right? So the Quintex was named the Quintex when campaign kicked off and the original group was there. None of the original characters from the original Quintex are in
here.
current now Quintex, but we're still the Quintex. And that really fits, like your point on it really fits to this. Like, is it the same? No, it's never going to be the same because experience changes things, even though it's the same shell, the same name on the ship, right? It's the same entity recognized as the Quintex. It is never going to be the same Quintex that it was yesterday. And this Quintex that we are today is not going to be the Quintex we are tomorrow.
Now, why are we called the Quintex?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I don't have, in character or out of character, I don't have the answer to that, other than maybe there were 5 of them when they started, and that's where it was like the Quintex instead of quintuplets. I don't know. It's just the name that was already established on the ship when I became a moving piece of that ship.
So you're the only original member from the beginning?
No. I did not join in the very beginning. Han Duke, I believe Han Duke's player was in the very beginnings of the campaign. Am I correct, Mr. World? Nope. So no, none of us.
Yeah, so we're a brand new group with a new same mission.
Han Duke has been in the party.
I wouldn't say, how many sessions have you all been in? You've all been in at least 10, 15 sessions.
At least.
Several, yeah.
We joined at level 11.
Right. So you just turned 16, so you've been in about 20 sessions or so.
You were there before me, right, Ren?
You've been here for
Nope.
40% of the campaign.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been here. Okay.
We joined the same time.
Yeah. So the backstory there is we had some inter party strife. We had 2 very different visions of what the direction should be. And going back to Holy's early conversation around open world and styles and choices, I've always had this this idea that we have multiple parties at various levels. They could be different levels, they could be the same level, operating within the same time on the same plane. They may be in different areas, but the choices that one party make could have a butterfly effect on choices that other people make. So if we talk about Skyrim, for example, you play Skyrim or like Dragon Age, where in Dragon Age, the choices you make actually affect the outcome. I wanted to make it so that people that weren't even in your party had the ability to affect plot triggers, events, alliances, all kinds of things. And maybe a second level party would do something in Glaciava that would come up when your party came through. And we actually pulled that off by splitting up into 2 nights, Sunday and Monday, and having a second party. But that party basically immediately TPK'd. First 2 weeks. And they got overrun with the zombie overrunning Broadwalk when they destroyed Broadwalk. We rebooted them at first level, and Sylvia Kayla was the DM, and we had that party in Glaciava. They were based there. So when you guys first got into that lighthouse and you fought like an ice devil,
yeah, my kids,
and you talked the kid ghosts. literally the week before on the Monday. So you played that on a Sunday. The Monday before that, the other party started to come in to the bottom of that lighthouse to try to get into the lighthouse to investigate children disappearing. So we were trying to like really tie the two campaigns together in one living, breathing world. So there's just like, there's a lot of that stuff, right? And there's some of it I can just tell you, it's all discoverable, obviously, on our channel. But there's some stuff I just don't want to volunteer because I want you to ask the questions. I'll give you what's appropriate for you to know. I'll unveil it as you explore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go back and you watch the Monday and then the Sunday, for me it was awesome because I was a player on the Monday. Kayla and I really heavily coordinated the sort of encounter. You came in through the top level of the lighthouse. They didn't make it. They made it to like the second floor and turned around and left. So they basically pushed with Turn Undead. They pushed all of those children up into the top floor where you encountered them.
And became my friends.
Yep, that's right. Timmy, I think.
Yeah, Timmy. Oh, fantastic kid. Too bad I can't do that no more.
So, like, those are the moments I was really looking for. So when we had some inter-party strife, I took it as an opportunity to split the two philosophies up. The very heavy combat-oriented part of the party, I was going to give them just grinder stuff. And then the puzzle and the storyline and the role play side stayed on Sunday nights, and they were going to get more of that food. You were all recruited as part of that. So Holy and I talked about can we fill out two parties, right? We split one party of 5 up. Can we fill out the rest of the people? And that's really when you were recruited. So that's the backstory. We're very meta tonight, but I like it. That's the backstory of how you were recruited. And it's just I think it was an ambitious thing we've attempted with this. I don't think there's a lot of worlds that do it. Not that I'm aware of, but
I've done a world like this before. Like I've done up to 10 different DMs, same world.
Yeah.
And that's massive catastrophic if one party does something horrifying to the world.
I love the idea. I am famous for not actually reading any actual D&D lore or watching or any fantasy books or watching any fantasy or sci-fi movies. Like I know so little. I barely know the rules of this game because I don't want to be. I don't want it to affect my originality, right? So the worst thing you can tell me is that you've seen it before.
Yeah, I seen like the concept, but I've never been to hell. in my 10 years of D&D, I've never been to hell.
I am trying to really. I read Dante's Inferno.
Oh yeah.
For months, over and over again, trying to soak up
and
what the concept is. Yeah, go ahead.
And that's interesting because I actually have, because of Dante's Inferno.
Okay.
So I'm like trying to like not be, because I've read Dante's Inferno and I've played into it with different character. So I'm like making sure I'm not like trying to guess. I'm just playing the character.
Yeah, and it's really like slap that skin on it, right? You've read it, so it's the concepts map, but you really have to like create a physical form that fits within what we do here, and that's been the interesting part for me. And where we're really going to head now is and that this started this week in the boat, right? We're going to start to tie some of the prime material plane story elements, the loose threads, as we are in level 16. The goal is to get to level 20. That's 16 more sessions. And we want to tie those loose threads up, and we want to bring that all together. So, NPCs, significant storylines, all of those things we're trying to. The Hag's starting last level. You've felt that. Oh, by the way, when you first got to Hell, you met some NPCs, one with a German accent named Vindy.
Mhm.
He died on the Monday night before that Sunday.
Oh Jesus!
So that was a character that died, and died. Like there was 3 party members. That was the last session that has occurred on I think maybe second to last of the Monday night campaign. So that was a character that died on a Monday and was down there in limbo on the Sunday. But yeah, the Hag storyline, I was trying to put a bow on that, right? We triggered this apocalypse. The Hags are dead, they're back in Hell. What are they, why were they doing this to begin with? Trying to bring that all to a close. So we're going to resolve a lot of the loose threads, some of which you all weren't there for, but yeah, I think you should all talk through all of them because they're going to come up and they are going to matter, right?
Yeah,
So,
like Zada, for example.
Like Zada. Is Zada a hero? Yes. Is Zada a villain? To some, she was a villain. Is Zada angry? Absolutely. Zada was driven to destroy the Green Dragon and get back at Esmeralda. She built an army to attack that forest, and her entire army was wiped out. None of you know why yet. None of you know why that happened.
Right.
How that happened. So, and now she's been killed, and you don't know. You heard something last week, right?
Yep.
On the boat, the billionaire just sort of dropped the hints in. But you're going to meet her, probably not tonight, but you're in the boat with her now. There's a lot there. Explore it. It matters.
Zada, absolutely, because that's one, Jason. That was one difference that we had between our right at our split time was we were in that like, is Zada good or is Zada bad sort of mindset. Like Sylvia and I had this kind of like aversion to her where it wasn't a negative one. We were drawn to Zada, and not just Zada, but Venka, because they were strong women in a world of men. Where all of the other BBEGs had been some sort of man. We had these 2 women who were power players on the board. They were 2, strong playing pieces on the board. And there was just Zada's story where her father had sold her when he was king off into prostitution, and she killed her dad and took over Harboron as their leader. And she did that through her people. And not only when she took over Harboron did she say things are going to change, but she actually made them change. And she held her position as Zada Regina through her people. She would go into the pit because we got to go. One of the things that our previous party had done was we went to Harboron a couple different times. And one of the times we went, we got to watch the fight where Zada went into the pit with nothing. And she took out the animals and things like that. And none of her stuff was enchanted or anything like that. It was just simply her people loved her so much that they gave her what she needed. And we actually had Olazana had entered to try to fight in that same competition and didn't get chosen to do so. And that was a really cool thing because we were still trying to figure out who is Zada Rib Splitter and what is her connection to the world. And we had found, a journal along the way, and some bits of information here and there. My very first session in the Quintex was we had gotten this journal, and the journal was by somebody at the point in time unknown, right? We didn't know who it came from, and we kind of had to deduce all of that information. And I actually have the journal entry.
Wait, while you cue that up, let me just close the loop on Zada. So once per month, Zada would walk into the arena naked against a beast, a monster, and the only thing she could use to fight that monster was things that the crowd threw into the arena for her. So that crowd, her life was entirely, and her power was entirely in the hands of her people and what they chose to throw down for her. What you will find out is that is how she died. She went into that arena and something happened where that crowd did not throw anything down, and she was killed by the beast.
Oh shit! Damn.
That is how she died.
Oh, that's horrible.
So, the how did that happen? What happened? You don't know that, but that is why she's laying in the boat with you right now, right?
Right.
Rin would know all of this. She was before joining the party, she was part of the personal guard, so she would know all about the history. Another part about Zada that was a big change. There were the comfort houses. She was sold into a comfort house.
Yep.
And she changed those comfort houses. They still existed, but instead of what you would think of from a comfort girl, the miners would walk in, there would be a sort of blessing, some sort of charm spell, and they would feel great and walk out feeling relaxed and great. And we role played that through a session, and that was early. Yeah.
Yes, I actually I bought all of the men in our party as the only female. I paid for all of them to go into the comfort house. And here they were excited. They were like, yes, we're going into the brothel. And they get in there and they get excited and they see it's nothing like they thought. And everybody's led into these rooms. And you come into this room with this woman and you're just like this calm presence, and like none of your magic works, and you're not able to ask questions that, you had thought you wanted to ask when you got into a room with the prostitute. And the guys came out and they were like, what the hell kind of comfort house is this? This is a ripoff. I want my money back. And I'm like, well, you didn't pay for it. And that was actually really comforting. I enjoyed that. It was really
horrible. Cool. That's awesome.
All of my gold, I started, when I joined the party, I had whatever my gold that, you start with your character gold. And I spent all of my starting gold in that session to make sure that every person in our party could get into a room in the comfort house for whoever to do as they pleased, as long as the mission goal got met. And they didn't get to do as they pleased, and the mission goal did not get met. But it was a crack up, right? Like, because they were like, what the hell just happened? I was not in, this was not a brothel. And then Mr. World says, well, the sign didn't say brothel. The sign said comfort house. Did you walk out feeling comforted? Yes, you did. You got exactly what you paid for.
Wow.
And that was in the very beginning of Tick joining the party. And so that was my first taste of Zada. And then we had Venka. Right? Venka is another open end. We don't know where she is. And there's some really important things that had happened. Like the first, one of the first things that I found that I came across as a character in the party was her journal. And we had read that, and she had this journal entry, and I'll read it to you. It's not super long. This is I'm not sure I copy and pasted it or typed it, but this is my Cliff Notes. It said, Mangard played the mandolin. He took a long time. Same effort I had used, but he had used it for a different purpose. I had learned to take what I wanted, and he had learned to make them want to give to him. He sang at the Mounted Mule, a favored tavern in all of the land. I once loved the tavern. I now don't because he was taken for granted. I took him for myself to help him become better. He had a young wife and infant child. I would wait to introduce myself until after he was free. I had rented my own room and taken an outfit and headed up to the door. She took the milk as she was tired and stressed. Thistle sting was a gentle poison, gentle sleeping of a slowing and stopping breath. The next morning, I heard from my open window the scream. I heard him begging for a cleric. For the first time, I spoke to him, and I loved that he was finally speaking to me. I knew he would, in time, be happy again. I told him I would be his guide as he traveled the country. We found a mansion that would be a beautiful place for those arts. As us once our home is established, he promised we would spend our days here. I knew I could never fail him, and I never had. So that was like my first introduction to not Zada, but Venka. And at the point when we got that, we didn't know who it belonged to, who she was, who Mangard even was. But Giles's character at the time when I joined was a warlock who had some family ties to where Escor was, which was some reason why they were trying to get there in the first place. I think I might be disconnected in that because it was prior to me joining. But we ended up going along and figuring out that it was Venka, and that figuring out who Mangard was and where he was. And now we have present day Escor College. We went to Escor, and Handuk, Sylvia, and Olazana actually rescued Venka, where Mangard's side chick had her chained up in the basement, and she was trapped there, and they rescued her, and then she got free and went to Zada after that. And there's just like a lot of things where we found where her and Zada were working in cahoots, unanswered questions on that. Why were they working in cahoots? Who are they working for? And what the hell are they trying to do? Things I need to know. Reasons I need to speak to Zada. Rin, so glad you're here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. And, can hopefully bridge that knowledge base. But especially before we go into the area of wrath. Not looking forward to wrath. But I really hated gluttony. I really hated greed.
Oh, greed was horrifying. It was my worst nightmare.
Yeah, horrible for you. And even before we got off the boat, that person really just wanted to kill them again.
I don't understand why he gave out free economics lessons. Don't you know that he took a measly 300 million gold piece inheritance and turned it into a 305 gold piece empire?
Yeah, and his lotions and foams, which I have adopted for Pisty on Thursdays.
All right, so here's the backstory on lotions and foams. That is a Handuk, the player known as Handuk. That is a song lyric that Rob, who plays Handuk, wrote. I was his drummer in a band, and he had a song. So I said lotions and foams. He immediately cracked up and went on mute, and someone else picked up on it, and off I went in an improvisation. Someone asked, something about the lotions and foams, and I went into trickle-down economics. But that was just a little Easter egg inside joke to Rob based on a song lyric that he had written.
Which is funny in that you mentioned that band, because another one of Tick's early adventures in the Quintex was Against a Shambling Mound.
Yes.
And that same band, for those of you who weren't here for that, has a song called Shambler of Love. Yep. And I was unaware at the time because, Jason, Giles, Rob, Alex, they had previous relationship. Giles' brother, Charlie. Joel, now they know each other outside of our world. And so I was blinded when I came into that. And then as soon as he started quoting the song lyrics from the Shambler of Love through to the, I think it was the druid at the time who had tried to speak to it, our Shillilag friend. And you started quoting, the Shambler of Love song back to him, and immediately the guys all knew and started cracking up, and I'm just sitting over here like, wow, that Shambler has some deep emotions. And then they're like, oh, it comes from a song, and I'm like, well, balls, I had no idea.
So all right, I have that lyric up because I wrote it down for that night, and I keep my notes. So I didn't sing it that night. Shocker. But shockingly, there's a musical background to this campaign. But I was sitting alone these are lyrics from that song. I was sitting alone in my hole, thinking about how it's getting kind of late. I was love hungry, and I don't love being hungry. I just want to take you up in my arms. I promise I don't mean any harm. I want to consume every molecule of you. I'm just a shambler for your love. And there are 3 verses of a shambling mound essentially digesting its trapped victim. But it worked as double entendre, right?
It was perfect. It worked out really well. And you guys have heard the Shillilag joke, and that was really also from that same session. Yep. Where the druid is from Philly with an Irish background and called a shillelagh a shillilag, and we all lost it because what the hell? In a scimitar, yep, a scimitar.
What the hell? What? A scimitar?
Scimitar.
But it's just those things, right? Like, it's those little things that happen through campaign that I love to touch on in character, especially since some of you weren't there in those initial days. Like the Rin, she who shall not be ignored, has carried on from the one session where Rin thought she was being ignored and will not be. And those are little trickle down, funny hee ha ha moments that we have in party, and I love it. I love party dynamics. I love having a relationship with my party members and with the world as my party, if that makes sense. Elion, I really want to know more about Elion and Bryden. I want to know more.
Yeah, how do you literally found each other? How do you become a master to trainer? What's the dynamic of one person to another?
Yeah, so I mean, Elion was the master of his martial arts school that was exclusively for Aarakocra. And he was an Aarakocra. And Bryden was basically left at the doorstep as an orphan because his parents were trying to give him a better life. And they thought that, by leaving him at this monastery, they would be forced to take care of him, and they're hoping that by being surrounded by things that could actually fly, that maybe he could overcome the curse that that King Ku suffer from of not having wings or being able to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And basically Elion took pity on this non-Aarakocra and basically allowed him to stay, but basically wouldn't formally teach him because that simply wouldn't be allowed. But he was left doing menial labor and was able to observe the lessons and learn kind of on the side. And ultimately it's because of that when the school was attacked and wiped out, that Bryden survived because he was cleaning the well at the time that everything was destroyed. And when he came out, everyone that he knew was gone and dead.
So he fell in? He fell in during the attack?
No, he had voluntarily climbed down into the well to clean it.
Oh, okay.
And so he was distraught and he was looking, and he ran across Elion's body and basically stole some of the sacred scrolls that the school had that had been hidden and not taken when the rest of the school was looted, and he tried to use them to bring Elian back, but of course he doesn't have the experience to properly use the scrolls. And so he was able to reincarnate Elian, but only as this very small, minor form.
Oh my god, that makes more sense now.
And so, Bryden feels bad that he wasn't able to restore Elian correctly, but by the same token, Elian feels indebted to Bryden because he's literally the only reason that he's still alive, basically. And so now he's like willing to teach Bryden, proper martial arts and see his, this master. But the style, like Bryden's style is the drunken master. It's not that he's trying to be drunk. The problem is that all of the moves that Elian teaches him rely on having functioning wings. And so he's very clumsy at trying to replicate these wings because he literally doesn't have the appendages necessary for the balance that they require. But he's managed to find a way to make it work for him. So his moves end up not seeming very graceful. They seem like he's drunk, but they actually work just because of his pure dedication and training to it.
Now, my question when it comes to that attack on the school, Mr. World, is that the battle of the monks and the gnomes that the original Quintex had?
Yes.
See, now there's another piece of missing information that I wish that I could pass on to you guys. Before, Handuk will have this as well. Before Tip joined, I remember hearing the stories of the party going to help either the monks or the gnomes. There was a battle where the party had gone to help them, and it ended up being a fairly devastating battle.
Yeah, it was really the first time the party met one of the mothers. So they were very early levels. They were escorting an alderman. You may have heard references to the alderman. An alderman from Broadwalk, who tried to intimidate them. Bad things happened. Mistakes were made. He wanted to retire. He asked them to escort him back to his home in Mistlake. So they did. So they took a little, level 2 type journey, escort mission through the outskirts of Esmeralda. They were attacked. They were attacked by Yuan Ti. They survived it. They got to Mistlake and found Mistlake was a small encampment of forest gnomes who were under siege. They were under siege by these monks who had dammed the river to the lake. The river ran right through the encampment. They had, the wooden palisades. So they felt super safe. The forest gnomes were not worried at all. Yes, it's a little problematic, but we have this cleric here who creates food and water, so we're not even worried that they cut off our water supply. The fact that they dammed Sokor Pass, not a problem. They were having fun. And then the party went to investigate the dam. They saw a figure in black give the command to one of the monks, and the monks destroyed the dam all in one shot and flooded the entire camp of forest gnomes. And just mayhem ensued, and the Battle of Mistlake began. Sort of on a flooded, muddy plain. Everyone got washed there. They had to make dexterity checks where they got washed into the lake itself. Handu got washed into the lake and was swallowed by a giant koi, brought down to the underwater lair of a Merid, and that's where Olazana was trapped. So that's the genie Olazana origin story right there. Rescued Olazana, came up into the middle of this battle between the monks from Asperon and the forest gnomes. One of the things that people noticed, they didn't connect the dots, was that as the forest gnomes died in this battle, they would turn to zombies. So they were zombie gnomes when they would die, and they had to be killed again. So the gnomes were on their side. They were helping the gnomes against the monks. The gnomes would die, turn to zombies, attack everyone in sight. So it's just super chaotic battle, right? Super chaotic session. But no one put it together. There had been 3 sessions of the Matrian Oath and like little breadcrumbs out there that, in order to be healed, you'd have to accept the healing powers of Matria. There's an oath that you take that essentially bound your soul to, if you ever die, you become a zombie. They didn't put it together. They just didn't put they were interested in other things. There was a lot I threw at them in that session, including the figure in black, the rogue at the top of the dam. The monks were viewed as clearly evil. Not that they were, but they were viewed as clearly evil.
Oh, Brian's evil?
No, I mean, that's how the party perceived him, right?
I'm
no
the
one
good guy
knows
now.
why.
He's evil
They didn't
now. I
explore
got it.
why the monks did it. They were obsessed with the rogue who commanded it, who wound up being Venka. Why did she do that? Why was she involved? Why were the monks involved? None of that's been explored or discovered yet. So, yeah. So that's sort of the background of the whole Asperon and the monks side that just hasn't really come out.
Which is good, because that brings up something that I had forgotten. And we have the list of our stuff that we're trying to find for the Chrononometron, and one of the pieces lies with the Wanti Lord. And Venka, here's Venka again. I feel like Venka is such an underrated part of our story, but I'll touch on that in a minute. But anyway, so Venka was involved with a lot of things. They have like a secret society at Escor, the Can and Candle. I don't know 100% if Venka is a part of that. Only Sylvia would know. She got accepted into that society. But Venka has ties to this group of Wanti rogues, which Mr. World had just mentioned, the Wanti. And one of our pieces lies with the Wanti. So I think Venka's going to be very important to us. I think she's been important all along. And with everything else, she kind of got lost in the sauce, like that we as a party, like not your guys' fault because you didn't really have interactions with her, but we as a party let that shoe drop when there was so much to her. We had her in our hands and she escaped, disappeared after Sylvia and Handuk and Olazana saved her. And then Handuk scried on her and she was with Zada. So there was like a lot of like, we need to talk to her, but we never really did talk to her. So that she may be our connection to a lot of things, because I believe the piece of paper that they initially found that had the info about the Chrononometron and the Tinkerer came from a Wanti bandit camp. Am I correct, Mr. World?
I'm sorry. The rings of poison resistance came from that camp. What was the question?
The paper that they initially found that had the information about the Tinkerer and the Chrononometron.
Good question. I don't remember. I know the note, but I don't know that it says where they found it.
I feel like a part of me
wants no, they found that actually in Merid's underwater lair. So
okay.
I think that came with Olazana.
Okay.
Here's the note. So now you understand why I wait below the waters. I'm not going to do the voice because I don't remember the voice. When the rib splitter sets fire to Esmeralda, the world will be choked to death. Her vengeance will be the undoing of man and elf alike. Then on the Tinkerer. This was written, well, a long time ago. Last I heard, he was in the great ancient library of Calthax. He was researching how to construct a device called the chronometron. This comes from questions about the terminus prophecy. The conflagration will come after the dead are laid to rest. When the forest dies, so will man. Stop the schism to save the world. See the Tinkerer.
And that note right there is what set the Quintex on the path to finding the chronometron. That's the note that we were like, this Tinkerer was important to these people. There's got to be some sort of importance. And so we went to Calthax. And when we got to Calthax, we had to like solve some puzzles and deal with the librarians who wanted our library cards, which we didn't have. So Olazana so aptly named her sword library card. So anytime that one of the Wraith librarymen would be like, where's your library card? She's like, here it is. And then we're in combat. Calthax was dangerous, but we got down to the Tinkerer, and that's really where the questions had come about the chronometron. There was a note somewhere, I think in Calthax, I have the notes on it, where it talked about the map and how the map had been around for a very, very long time. However, the ice caps that were drawn in the map did not exist at the period of time that the map was created, which alluded to some sort of time travel, that somebody had built the chronometron before. And that's where we got into the Tinkerer and kind of, you know, how we sat on the quest towards the pieces to the chronometron, which has really opened up a lot of other things. That's how we ended up, you know, with Rin, Elian, and Scully. Is one of the pieces that we ended up finding was this helm, which Sylvia got a mission from the Canny Candle that she needed to go retrieve this artifact for her entrance exam, essentially. And so we went with her and we battled a bad guy. I can't remember what his name was, Eddie something. And 2 Minutes to Midnight was the song that was the illusion in the clock that was there. But we went in and we got this piece and she took it back. Well, we ended up finding out along the way, once we got the book, that the piece that we had found, we bartered away to a genie because we needed the damn book that we bartered the helmet for. So we have to get the helmet back. Lucky the genie is my patron, so I maybe might have a little benefit there with that helm. But there's just a lot of like, you know, small things that have happened that felt so small at the time, but really were future story necessities, right? Like that note, Venka being there at the Battle of Mist Lake. You know, Elian is from the Monk College of Asperon and has a whole different viewpoint on the attack, right? So our initial Quintex party viewed the monks as evil because they, you know, they attacked these gnomes, but we know Venka was there. But why was she there, and what did she say to the gnomes to get them to help, right? Because Venka was working with Zada and trying to get Esmeralda away from, you know, the guy who has it, Cyrano Arborfell, aka something, Loggerman Feller, who's actually a green dragon. And this makes sense now, Mr. World. I just put this together when you had said, when you read that note again, the Tontine. We came across these books together as a group about the Tontine, who is it Hatem Abishusha wrote the book? He's the author of that?
Yep, that's right.
So Hatem Abishusha wrote this book about dragons, which explained the Tontine, which is essentially this contract that chromatic dragons entered into in the beginning of time that, you know, they
All
were going to
dragons.
have their shit. All dragons entered into that. They were going to split the world amongst themselves, and whoever had the biggest amount was, the winner. And so,
Actually, no. The Tontine is an agreement. This is a real thing in history, where powerful people agree that not to interfere with each other in life. But let's say there are eight people. When one dies, instead of having heirs inherit their riches and their wealth go into the tontine. So essentially, it's a winner take all wager. The last person living, or in this case, the last dragon living, would inherit all of the treasure that all of the dragons amassed in their life. So, however many dragons are in the world, they are part of this tontine. As you can imagine, that would create certain incentives for the members to die. So let me read it. The dragons of the realm agreed to enter into a tontine. They agreed to infiltrate the cities and kingdoms of the pre-schism realm and begin to consolidate treasure. The treasures were to be hoarded. As members die, their shares devolve to the other participants. And so the value of each annuity increases. On the death of the last member, the tontine is concluded.
which essentially, it kind of just dinged a bell, right? Like, we know now that Maestra was pulling the strings behind Zada and Venka, and kind of gives information to why Venka was having something to do with, trying to take this forest from Cyrano Arborfell, who was holding on to all of Esmeralda. And Cyrano Arborfell is the green dragon that inhabits Esmeralda now. He took it, I guess you want to say fair and square, but on a dirty, shady dealing from the elven people that lived there before.
Hey guys, I'll be right back. One moment.
Sure. He kind of like tricked him out of it. And it's just like a lot of these pieces are making, we're at level 16, the goal is to hit to level 20. These things that happened at level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are starting to make sense now at level 15, 16, and on up, where we're like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. So then it just goes my brain, am I just another ticking, cog of the puzzle sort of situation, like, is this really the way to go? And I think there was a conversation once with Han Duke where we talked about, do we go back before the schism and change the things that happened? Do we go back and make minor changes that affect the worlds that we grew up in, but nothing too big? Do we go back and stop the Tontine? There's just so many things of, what do we do once we get the chrononometron? What is the Quintex as a whole wanting to do once you get the chrononometron? And even so, what does every individual member of the group have so invested into this chrononometron that they're willing to risk their entire existence to not even build the damn thing, but to find the pieces? What's everybody's individual involvement, right? Scully kind of mentioned that he was wanting to, go and get it for himself when he was walking with the necromancer path, but now he's kind of seen that that's not the way to go, that's not what he wanted. So something we didn't know in character, which we still don't know in character, was that one of our party members was wanting the chrononometron for themselves. How many of us are sitting here wanting the chrononometron for ourselves? What is everybody's reason for even agreeing to go in the first place? Like, we know why Scully went. Why is Tick so hell-bent on getting the pieces of the chrononometron? What investment does Rin have into getting these pieces for this? Elion, Bryden, what do they have? Like, what does Han Duke? I know what Han Duke's is because we've talked about it, but like, what is everybody's reason? Is that something that I want to know in character? What makes my party members tick so that I can know why they're involved in this mission? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like it's just like a big question, right? Like,
Well,
what is
it's going to be very simple for some of us. Very simplistic views. I can tell you, Rin has a very, very simplistic view of what's going on.
and like Tick? I can only speak really for Tick because
let's hear it. Let's hear Rin's simplistic view.
Well, at her core, she is, as you all now know, she was raised by wolves. She was raised to be part of a pack, to be part of something bigger than an individual, and so that's kind of how she lives her life. Is even coming back to being around, to being part of the human experience. She still came into an army. She still came into where again it's more more than just your individual needs. And so when this comes to her, that there's something that's going to destroy the world, that's a pretty big thing. And it's just that it's more than just her. She's now has the opportunity to bring this about, to right the wrongs for the greater good. And then there's the very, very selfish part, which is Sylvia's cute. So
I love it though. That's perfect. It all boils down to Sylvia's cute. Like I like it, That's great. Oh, Rin, bless your heart. That's so good.
there you go.
That's so good. Like really, realistically, because Tick and Handuk and Sylvia met Scully, Elian Bryden, and Rin at Escort. We invited you into our camp. We said, hey, you look like you are useful. You want to come on an adventure. And we sat you down and we sugarcoated to you the reason why we were on this mission. And you guys were like, yep, we're here. Let's do it. Right. So I'm like, in my heart of hearts as a player, I'm like, damn, that was easy. Right. But like in the opposite side, I'm like, damn, did I bamboozle these people to their death? Right. Like, do they actually really understand the magnitude of the Chronometron now?
You literally did bamboozle them to their death. You were literally in hell.
Right. Essentially, yeah, but like the big death, the long death, right? Like the long swim. And it's just like, I can't speak for the other two because they're not here, but I know Tick, her original reasoning for wanting to build the Chronometron is entirely different than it is now. So when I initially was like, yes, let's meet the Tinkerer, let's go to Calthax, let's find out about the Chronometron, it had nothing to do with, this weapon falling into the wrong hands could cause impending doom to the rest of the world. It had everything to do with the character flaw. I have to be the best, and if somebody is better than me, then there's a fucking problem. So that was the very beginning. Well, if that Tinkerer is going to build this Chronometron, I'm going to be there to find the parts and pieces, and I'm going to help build it so that way he doesn't get all the credit for being a better Tinkerer than me, because all in all, I need to make my workshop where I came from proud. That was the very beginning reasons for Tick so heavily pushing the party to Calthax, because I probably was the annoying little sister in the group when I was like, let's go to Calthax. Let's go to Calthax. We need to go to Calthax. Like, that was my annoyance for 2 or 3 sessions in a row, I think it was, that I was hounding them. Like, we need to go there. Not for any other reason at the time than the fact that I had this inner Pokemon trainer. I needed to be the very best, like no one ever was. And through my own character development, now Tick's mindset is in a whole different place as she's met different party members and met different NPCs and watched some tragedies happen and the million zombie army that's unleashed on a world that she just wanted so desperately to live in before she ever left Kindermoon, that there's a whole like, no, I really do want to save the world aspect coming out of her now. It's just like that whole difference of where I started with my desires to build it to where I'm at now. Like Scully had in the initial, he had his own selfish reasons too, and now he's like, no, we really need to do this because there's some bad shit happening. You know?
Yeah, I follow. I mean, honestly, the reason why Elliot and Bryden signed on so easily is, like we said, we joined at 11th level, and I was thinking about, what it is they're trying to do, and the fact that they've gotten to 11th level and still made like zero progress towards this. They're sort of getting the idea that maybe there isn't a way of like restoring his body. Like maybe that's actually impossible. But if they can go back and stop him from ever losing it in the first place, then that's another way of solving the problem. And so to a certain extent, they've kind of given up trying to find any other solution, especially now that they've seen that, hey, we can just go back in time and fix it. And these folks seem like good people, and that they they probably want to go back and change other things and do other good stuff, and we'll be more than happy to help with that because it's the right thing to do. But honestly, I don't think they've thought it through any further than that. It's just kind of, well, it'll all just work out in the end, and it's fine.
And that's a very like Ellie and Bryden kind of mindset from my understanding of the character. Well, it's all just going to work out. We're just going to roll with it, sort of thing. Like, I set 4 punches your way. None of them worked. Next time, maybe they will. Let's just move on with it, sort of kind of way, you know?
Right.
It's great. Like, I feel like when we sat you guys down and caught you up at our fireside that day, that our in-character explanation for the reason for needing these pieces and people was very much more sugar-coated than what was actually going on. Because we were like, we had talked previously, Handuk, Sylvia, and Tick, like, how are we going to convince people to, possibly fight to the death for something they may never even see to happen? That's something that couldn't, maybe it doesn't even work. Maybe the chronometron is a fucking nightlight. We don't know, right? Like, how do we convince people to go with us on this adventure that we don't even really 100% know if it's a real thing or if the tinkerer is either good or evil? We don't know if he's a good tinkerer. We don't know if he's a bad tinkerer. We don't know who he works for. We don't know his associations. Nothing. We walked into the library. We were so excited to finally make it down to him. We had just leveled up. I was peeing my pants in excitement to get to talk to the guy, where it was the first time the party had ever saw Tick change, where she went from her normal, like, little dwarven stature that she initially carried herself with to this little gnome where she changed what she looked like and started speaking in gnomish so she could communicate with this man. And it was just like this whole, like, we came here to ask questions about this. Oh, you want to build it? Oh, that's great. You can build it. Oh, you need the pieces? Cool. Where do we find the pieces? Oh, you don't know where all the pieces are and you need the book to know where they are? Great. We'll go get you the book. We'll be right back. And then off we went. We didn't say, hey, who does number 2 work for? There was none of that sort of like, are we putting this chronometron in the hands of a good tinkerer or a bad tinkerer, right? Like, we don't even really honestly know. And we didn't tell you guys that. Like, we really were just like, well, we need this because it could be helpful, and we don't want it to I think we said we didn't want it to fall into the hands of the wrong people was what we used. In character, of course. So, but like, I've thought about that. I'm like, damn, we really bamboozled these guys. And now we're in hell and Scully knows his mom was a hag and shit's really tore up. That's kind of fucked up, man.
Well, for Ren's part, she's had some unique experiences so far traveling with them. I mean, just the which unfortunately you missed, Tick, was with the acting as part of a pack again, like actually utilizing that familial background to help. Uh, was just an amazing moment.
And that is one of my favorite things about D&D is that's my favorite part of being a DM is watching characters develop, right? Like you come into this campaign with this character who at level 1 you think you have this glorious backstory for, but then you just watch this character bloom into something that you never realized they were going to bloom into, and you get to see the relationships play out between the other party members with, you know, the characters. And I like it. I like to see, even as a player, right, it makes me happy when I see, you know, my party members make a connection that ties them together for more than just, hey, we're 5 people who like to play D&D, we built these characters, we're following this storyline, we're going to do it, right? Like, the Handuke and Scully disconnect really weighed heavy on me for a long time, because Handuke had been so deeply rooted in the campaign as a character that he was very pivotal in, you know, his views on things. And unfortunately, like when Scully and Handuke had, you know, their little banishing argument a couple of sessions back, I had to sit back and reflect in myself, like, what happens if in my party again 2 more party members have a disagreement where we, you know, sides have to be chosen. Where do I stand, right? And unfortunate for Scully, he would have got 16 fireballs to the forehead so I could protect Handuke, because Handuke is the closest thing that I have to family at this point, because Olazana was my best friend. She's dead now. Sylvia has taken her self back to the bathhouse where she wanted to stay and not leave, and now I don't have her. And so, like, Handuke's like the last, I don't know where Alabaster is. So Handuke is my person, and unfortunate, like, that's the relationship development. And now I'm happy to see that Scully and Handuke are going to connect in a way that I don't now have to think if I have to kill Scully.
Right.
You know,
I had the same feeling.
Yeah, the wolf session I really liked. I think it got overshadowed with Argent the next week, but where you connected with those wolves, and I think they were intended to be against you. They wound up helping you kill the big monster, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome, because it fit. Basically, I didn't see it coming as the DM, and the way you laid it out, I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's how it's going. That's how it's going. So yeah, it was pretty awesome how that session went. I'm looking. That was in August. Time flies. That feels like it was just a few sessions ago.
Yeah, and but even which for Ren as the character, that moment then following up at Argent's, which was like a complete opposite for her, because she felt really uncomfortable at Argent's and very like exactly opposite of what she had just experienced. And so for her as a character, it was actually a little traumatic for her.
Yeah, that makes sense. You go through that heavy wilderness to get to this palatial estate on an island with more wealth than you'd ever even dreamed of. Nothing at all like Zada's mining city, which is epic and many people and a huge operation, where this is just like one insanely rich palace with a couple of, 2 or 3 people in it, one of which is very clearly a silver dragon, right?
Right.
Who looks like a human. So yeah, it made perfect sense that you'd be like headspun by that.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought up the we haven't, I guess we'll role play that, but the gifts that were given there have not come back into the game. And you brought that up this week, so that's really cool tie back. That's a good callback. And I think one of those sessions is where I will not be ignored. Maybe the session before that against Giants. Maybe it was the 1 week before that, before the Wolves.
Yeah, and unfortunately I missed that. And I was so happy for the Dragons. But damn it. I'm gonna have to go back and listen. I'll have to find the session number so I can see like the wolf thing, and then Ardent.
Yeah.
Because the dragons are super, super clearly tied important into the world, right? Like they're everywhere. Kolo and Shaba were at the Joyful End in the city who does not exist anymore, so I can't remember its name. Then there's the red dragon at Harboran, the green dragon in Esmeralda, the blue dragon in the Fjordlands. There's a white dragon in the Fjordlands also, I believe. I think that was the other one that was up there.
That dragon got killed by the other what's her name? Belvoka and her party. Belvoka and her party, by the way, came in and saved you. I forget when. I think it was in Up with the Angel. She came in and saved you.
Yeah, that was the session I missed.
Yeah. However, Belvoka and her party was the party that killed the hags and started the entire collapse into a zombie apocalypse.
Yep, she was the only one that made it out of that alive.
Yes. And you met them in a bar. She did a performance. You met that entire party. They were definitely good characters.
The Saison.
And they thought they were doing a good thing. It just happened to cause an apocalypse.
Actually, meeting that party, do you guys remember when we got to the lighthouse in the Fjordlands and I said, I know how to solve this lighthouse. I have the information on it. Meeting Belvoka's party, we had met, there were, almost essentially everybody that was in our party. There was somebody in her party that was of equal sort of character style, right? So there was a ranger, a fighter, a barbarian, blah, blah, blah. And one of them was a little gnome who I think his name was something to do with sparkling, but I can't remember what it was. But they had talked to us about their adventures. We kind of, gave them a little chunk of meat to chew on about our adventures, and they kicked stories back, yada, yada. And I had sat and talked to him when it came to my turn to interact at the table, because we each went around and interacted with the people that we were, paired up with, essentially. And I got to talking to him, and he was telling me of their adventures, and they're actually the party that told us that there was a lighthouse in the Fjordlands, that they didn't get it activated, but what it looked like on the inside, what they had to battle to get to it, which gave us a little bit of an upper hand of going into that one, because we knew what we were to expect when we got there, but all the rest of them we're going to run into basically blind, because we have no information at this point on them once it gets there. But
that's right. You, in that discussion, they mentioned Matria, and you told them that they were hags, I think.
I think Handuk gave up that information. It was either Handuk or Olazana, one of the two, gave up that information. It was because we were there at that bar, listening to the performance, following the clues to try to figure out who the Joyful End was. And the Saison did not contract through the Joyful End, but they were, in relation to them, where they had this, we have this whole plan and we'll help do it because we want this shit to stop too. So the Joyful End knew of, the people from Matria basically needing to take a long sleep at the bottom of the tunnel where Kolo and Shaba were. So the Joyful End was basically a Dr. Kevorkian society where they were assisted suicides to people who were just ready to die or on the verge to die anyway. And so the Saison, that was that same time where we listened to the performance. The performance was coded. We had to figure out through the few songs that we had heard her perform the message that we needed to find the Joyful End when we went in and when we had our meeting with Kolo and Shaba. And Kolo and Shaba actually could have saved the Monday night group when they got TPK'd if the Monday night group could have just remembered their names, but they didn't remember them, so they died.
Yeah, that was a Monday night. The apocalypse occurred. They were fighting it. The dragons basically came out of the Joyful End, started fighting against the the zombies. The dragons flew overhead. Olazana called out to them, and he couldn't remember the name, so they didn't rescue the party members. So remember names, ask names, and remember them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like that was two of the dragons, and I remember having a conversation with Sylvia at one point where we had talked about the dragons and the Tontine and their overall play in the world, where we had even considered trying to work out a deal with metallic dragons when we came across them to help us in the long run of keeping the world in order. Because, you know, metallic dragons are meant, or not meant to be, but are generally leaning more towards like a neutral good, you know, kind of nicer than the chromatic dragons, which are mostly known to be evil. So we'd even talked about trying to work with them, but now having recollection that all dragons are tied to the Tontine, I'm not really sure how much that would have worked. And I'm kind of glad that got shoved under a rug somewhere, because that could have potentially been the death of us, because the Tontine, Kolo and Shaba were young copper dragons. And what we learned about young copper dragons is they liked humor and stuff. Well, Handuk had slipped up in conversation, being not a very charismatic character, about the Tontine, and the dragons went on edge, and we closed session right there as the dragons went up on edge, and we had to spend the week trying to figure out how are we going to backpedal out of this situation, because even the metallic dragons are, you know, when the Tontine is mentioned, they're like not okay, right? So we had to backpedal away and get them laughing, and we built a little thing for them, and Sylvia told jokes. Sylvia really like saved our bacon there, because I made a terrible check on the thing that I made, so it wasn't really very fancy at all, so they didn't give two shits about it. But she started telling jokes, right, about old people and this and that, and Kolo and Shaba just loved her ragging on Handuk, because they were like teenage boys. They had adolescent humor where they thought it was funny to call the guy a boomer, and it was good. We just, you know, we made the jokes and got out of there. But
let me give you some jokes from them. You can live to be 100 if you give up all the things that would make you want to live to be 100. You know you're getting old when you get that one candle on the cake. It's like, see if you can blow this out. Here's another one. I used to work the nightclubs with a lich. This would be good for a necromancer. I used to work the nightclubs with a lich. Like many comedians, he was a tormented soul, funny guy, dry wit, and a deadpan delivery. He killed almost every time he got on stage. Let's see. People ask me why I hate necromancers, but I just saw one wearing a No Lives Matter tunic. Okay. So I prepared a bunch of jokes.
yeah, no, it was really good.
You know, bunch of old person jokes. You know you're old when people no longer view you as a hypochondriac.
Yes, I love it. I love it, right? Like in the humor, I'll tell you another thing that I love about Sunday nights is funny stuff, right? Like I love the humor. I love the just roll with it. I love the improv. You know, there was a session where we went to the first time we had ever gone to Kindermoot, and Giles was still here. Handuk was gone for the day, so it was me, Giles, Olazana, Sylvia. We went to Kindermoot, which is where Tick is from. And I had said something about somebody being my father figure, and Giles took the reference of it and went with it, right? And started singing the song, the George Michael song, which I had never heard the song before, so I didn't catch on. And here I'm like, Don, you're being a freaking creep. And everybody else, like the older members of our party, are having a giggle, and I didn't get it. So here goes Jason, plays the damn song, right? And it was just good because we made jokes about it for a while. And that same session is the one where, you know, Don Guy Caballero de Venganza decided to, mansplain to me how to work in a workshop that I had grew up my entire life in. So there was jokes that came out of that. That's what I like, the improv and the comedy and the ability to go back on it as well, where it's not so, here's the story, we're going into combat, you're going to talk to these 3 people, and then we're going to move on, right? Like the open, we're just going to roll with it sort of thing, I think is a lot of fun.
All right, what else do we talk about? This was not the plan, by the way, but I heard you before we went live. Heard you talking, and I thought, well, this will be good. Let's start with this and see where it goes from there. So you and I have been talking about doing something like this as a recap, just sort of like a review, how we got to where we're at. Because I think we did it when you first joined, the new party members, but none of it probably made sense then. I think now is probably a good time for some recap and review, and because some of these threads won't matter, some of them will matter over the next 16 sessions.
And yeah, and that's another thing, right? Like, what do we do in Benalia when we hit level 20? Do we stay in Benalia? Do we jump off the face of the cliff and be reborn into somebody new and living in the new Benalia? Like, what do we do? We're at level 16 now, right? Like, and there still feels like there's so much more to do than what 16 more sessions are going to pull us to level 20. I feel like I could spend a lifetime as a character just working through the things in Benalia that we have touched on here and there, but haven't really indulged in. Like, I would love to go to the place Eliana's from and see Asperon. I've been to Harboron a couple of different times. I know what Harboron used to be, and I know what I want to see it be. I never have been to Asperon. I want to go. I would like to see the character development or, interaction that comes from Elian and Bryden going back to that place that they have spent so much time away from. There's just a lot more that I just feel like there's more. There's just a lot more that I want to know.
Yeah, and each of you got backgrounds when you joined that probably made no sense at the time, but hopefully make more sense now over time. I think
they do. Absolutely. Because I didn't know when I first joined. I made a changeling sorcerer because I made the time sorcerer because I was like, well, this is cool. I've never played this. I'm going to play it. And then I said, hey, this is the character that I made. And Jason said, okay, you're going to be from here. So then it was like, okay, I'm going to be from here. I'm not a person that likes to write backstory anyways, because I think backstory weighs down the development of a character. So it was nice to get it. And then I was like reading it and I'm like, I don't know where any of these places are. I don't know any people here. I don't know anything about this. And now I have built my own place there and my own person from there and information and things and learned. And now it makes sense with the Red Dragon and the pushing of below, and the greed and the Tantine, all stuff that I never understood because the story of the Red Dragon was given to the party from Tick one night when they were sitting around as a children's tale that they had been told since they were small. When they talked about how they used to live where Harboron sits now, and then the Red Dragon came, and they were artificers and blacksmiths and workmen and things like that, craftsmen. And they got, they lost this battle, and what was left of them got pushed into, the poverty that is now Kindermund. And even so, like, Handuk talking to Tick about Kindermund really was a whole, like, eye-opener for her as well, because growing up in Kindermund when you're poor you don't know you're poor when that's your lifestyle. Like when you're growing up in that poverty, you don't realize how impoverished you are because that is your everyday lifestyle. When everybody around you is hungry and everybody around you gets sick and dies at a young age, or everybody around you is just depressed all the time, you don't know that that's what you're living in until you're up and out of that place. So taking the party into Kindermoon, where I'm like, oh my God, you guys are going to love this place. You're going to get to meet my cousin Vinny, who always gets blown up, and Alabaster. He's like this super good craftsman, and he makes all the coolest shit you'll ever see. And you're going to get to meet my friends. And then you get there, and you're in this like mushroom-covered cavern that leads you into these like tunnel town built by dwarves who are underground. Alabaster's kooky dukes. Vinny's blown himself up somewhere, and my little BFFs are Portobello and Inoki, little gnome guys. And it's just like everybody's looking around, and I'm just like, oh, doesn't it smell so good? It smells like home, because you know it's the fungus and the smell of the fire and the workshop and getting to hear all the clocks and things like that. You know, it was like that homey feeling to me. But Handuk said, Tick, your people are oppressed. Like, don't you want to see better done for them? Don't you want more out of your life than just this? Don't you want to help them? And then you're just like, but this is my home. And then you're traveling the world as your character, and you see all of these other things in the world happening, and you're like, well, maybe my home does need that kind of help. You know?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's like what I was talking about with Ren, with the whole Argent area. It just was. It's completely opposite. It's like, but when you're used to being one way, and then you're thrust into this extravagant area, and that's actually why, you know, that person in the last level really like danced on her nerves so much, because it's just it didn't feel right. It doesn't, because that's not who she is. And so I completely understand that circumstance. And I have a feeling that Ren would have loved, you know, visiting Tick's area.
I'm sure.
I mean, so that they were trapped between the Underdark and the surface is very, very. I don't think you'd have loved it whatsoever. In fact, you came from the area that was oppressing them, so.
Yeah, I she would have had mixed feelings. Absolutely.
Like, Kindermont it's a slum, right? It's a ghetto. It's a third world country. It's very much so a place of sadness. Even Tick going home now, and that is her home, just feels this longing sadness, to the point so much that she got Alabaster out of Kindermont and to a place where she thought he could live out his days much happier, because he went nuts from fire gilding. And you probably would appreciate it for what it was, but I don't think you would have liked it as a character. I think it would have touched your nerves in a place of, wow, the place that I'm living has pushed these people to here.
Yeah.
Which is really something that I think is a good probably connecting point between Rin and Tick to talk about at some point when they're not in hell, or maybe even so when they're being in hell, because Zada is a big part of that. Now knowing that the Red Dragon, you know, went nuts over his queen, means that her and him had more of a relationship than just a pawn. So she knows more. And that even changes kind of Tick's view on Zada, where she didn't really view her as an oppressor of the people of Kindermont, because she thought, well, she's just having her strings pulled by this Red Dragon too. And now she's questioning that, is that the reality? Like, was he pulling her strings, or were they willingly, like, was she willingly doing this with him because there was more to their relationship? And maybe I'll never know that. Maybe I'll find it out from her being dead. But there's just like a whole, you know, this whole like bringing the people of Kindermont back to the surface And now that Zada's dead, that very well may happen. But we might have to go back there because Alabaster had built this dragon. And it was a mechanical dragon. And we had to break it because it kind of went off on its own. But it was meant to protect them from other dragons. So when you see Tick scribbling in her notebook, ever since then, she's been designing plans in her notebook to try to make that dragon better to help take care of some of these pesky ass dragons, the red and the green for certain, because they seem to be the biggest pains in the ass around. And she's got this like thought process of, can we fix this the right way? Since Alabaster was losing it, maybe he wired something wrong and that's why it went off on its own. So maybe we can rebuild it and fix it and make it helpful. Make it be what it was supposed to be by, somebody who would have been in their right mind.
Yeah, so the fun part of that for me was Giles mentioned fire gilding?
Fire gilding, yep.
Which reminded me of the podcast Shit Town, which got me into this is Alabaster. He's been driven insane from Mercury working on gold plating for these mechanical constructs. He's been driven a little batty. So those are the things when you throw things out. This is why I love playing with Giles, because he'll throw out a reference which gets my brain going, and suddenly like I've just now got, and you I don't know when you can notice it, but I've now got 10 minutes of content. I had no lotions and foams prepared. I had no trickle down economics prepared. I just had in my head, there's a billionaire on the boat and he's an arrogant, basically Jeff Bezos type. I threw out one line that was an Easter egg. You guys latched onto it, and that launched me into 15 minutes of content. So the more you guys say, the more my brain works, and that triggers things in real time. And that's what I'm doing behind the screen is, just improvising, looking stuff up. Like if I'm on mute, I'm looking something up. I'm trying to find a visual, trying to find an audible prompt, trying to come up with a quote, a line. So I'm playing just as hard as you guys are for sure.
And I love it. Because like DMing from a module, I homebrew DM, I module DM, I play down the middle DM, but the DMing from a module makes it feel like it's scripted, and like the characters, you can only play, you play one D&D module, you play the same. They're all the same damn thing from start to finish with a different story put on it. So characters, and like they're the same, Lost Mines of Found Ever, Tiamat, the Dragon Horde Queen one, Strahd. You play through Strahd, it's the same campaign every time you play it, because it's maybe different things, you choose a different path, but essentially, you go into Barovia, you fight through the things, you find the artifacts, you go kill the bad guy. That's the same. Strahd is the same every time. So you really, unless you're going to completely spin it, you don't get the same kind of improv abilities that you do with the way how Benalia is and the way that our Sunday nights go, where you have just a group of people who come together and say, okay, well, we kind of know what we're doing, but we also know that we can be funny, so let's just shoot some funny shit out and go with it, and it works. And I like it. Sunday's my favorite night of the week.
All right. What did we miss? Rin, what do you want to talk about?
Oh,
now's the time where nobody's going to be watching it. Hour 50 in, you can ask me stuff and I don't have to worry about spoilers.
I actually don't really have much talk about. I mean, I've gotten lots of information, especially this this discussion, and I don't know. I tend to be a bit of an organic player, so like I evolve based on my experience. So can't really think of anything specific right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool.
Oh, well, I will say I do for some reason with Ren specifically. Ren's not very funny. She's the straight man of the party. Like, and you kind of have to have a straight man in the party. So that is one thing that I will say about her.
Plenty of very funny people play things straight. I mean, that's the hardest thing to do in comedy is to deliver a line that sounds earnest, but if you connect the dots, it's actually hilarious.
Right. That's what I strive for with her.
Right.
What cracks me up about Elion when it comes to humor is Bryden is so, I guess you would say, naive.
Right.
That somebody will be like, they'll say something completely obscure and off the wall, and Elion or Bryden will say, well, but, and then he'll go on with it. And it sounds like it's not a funny thing that's said. It's just the way that it's said that it's like, oh, this guy's got jokes. And it cracks me up, but it's just me, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, he has a below average intelligence, so I try to, like, if I can take something literal and it's funny, then I'll do that. Or sometimes I'll just, like, take, like, the worst possible interpretation of something, where it's, like, clearly he's thought about it and just, like, completely come to the wrong conclusion about whatever the thing is.
I think we just had something like that with Scully's mom, where he had something that really got me. I was like, did he really? Yeah, he really. Okay. And a lot of times, I oftentimes wish that the audience could see some of the things that we say to each other in private chat, because I think some really good jokes get made there sometimes, and then I'm like, damn, that's pretty good, but we don't end up saying it like in character and things like that. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do post stuff in there that, like, I'm posting it there instead of saying it, because it's like, well, but, like, it's a really cool moment in game, and I don't want to, like, detract from that or, pull attention away. But, I'll comment.
All right, we almost went 2 hours talking about the campaign. That's good. I like it. I think these are important. I think we should probably do, and I have to do a little bit of StreamYard gymnastics to do this, but I would like, after we stop, because I am very much a theater of the mind person, right? When we go live, we should be in character. We should stay in character. I'm not a like out of character. Here's this meta thing, because I don't like bringing people out of the world. But I like the idea of when we stop broadcasting and we stay on for 10 minutes. That I think would be interesting as well to capture. Not that anybody would necessarily watch it, but I like that sort of recap, regroup after moment. I would just have to set up a separate session to do like 15 minutes after, like, what do we think? What are our speculations? What do we think for next week? I really want to watch the Discord channel for the ideas that you have, and you may be just throwing out things that are, right. You might be like, this may not be right. If you throw out 5 different wild speculations, there's a chance that even if I was thinking something else, if you've come up with a better idea and I think it works better long term for the story, that will now be the truth, right? And you may not see it for months, and it may be a slightly different version than your speculation, but Like, I'm inspired by your ideas. I think the story's better when it's 5 or 6 people telling it rather than one person telling it and other people receiving it and surviving it. That's why I don't like modules. I just don't like modules because it's really, the story's already written. It's, can you survive it? That's a video game mindset. To me, this is a collaborative storytelling exercise. That's the way I like to play D&D. It's the way I've always liked to play it. So it's not, can we survive a challenge? It's, what's the story we're going to tell together? That's why I never prepare any of this content until Sunday afternoon. Like, I have basically notes that I'll take, ideas, but it's usually far less than you think it is. By 5 p.m., I start to write the encounter based on who I know is going to be here. I'm looking for the sweet spot that is, if you make a bunch of bad decisions and have bad rolls, it could kill you, and you know that, and you feel that. Find that sweet spot between the TPK, the obvious TPK, and the obvious steamrolling where you just beat it super fast or super easy. I want fast and deadly is the battle tone that I go for. All right, we just lost them. So I think 2 hours we're going to drop.
All right. See you
That was
guys.
fun. All right, we'll see you.
See ya.